ladies and gentlemen. Yes, my name is Edi Cahyono. I'm from Department of Agricultural Communication and Extension, Faculty of Agriculture, University of Brawijaya, East Java, Indonesia. My presentation is participatory communication and extension for indigenous farmers, empowering local paddy rice growers in East Java. So my project is in East Java. This is near Bali Island. If you know, Bali Island is very famous for tourist destination, and it's about 2.5 hours from Singapore, from here, by plane, of course. Yeah. Talking about local paddy rice and indigenous farmers. So the related concept is biodiversity and indigenous community. The preamble of Convention on Biological Diversity stated that biodiversity has a tight bond with indigenous community, in which the community has wisdom. It could be knowledge, practice, norms, technology, or whatever, which is embedded in their culture to preserve biodiversity. That's included also seed diversity. It is said in the preamble that the activity of development, modernization has threatened the wisdom. So because of the threat, the biodiversity decreased. That's including also the variety of seeds, and particularly the local rice varieties. That's not only the seeds could be disappear, but also the related knowledge and practices and the technology related with the seeds. The reason is why local knowledge is considered eliminated because of the modernization. First, because of it is perceived primitive, low tech, low production, and many scholars consider that it is less scientific. In the case of my project in the region of Banyuwangi in the East Java province, there were right now 17 rice and sticky rice varieties used by the indigenous farmers. But some years ago, long time ago, according to research, there were about at least 37 varieties of local rice, and include also the sub-varieties. So some varieties have already extinct, and then the number is about 50%, and this is quite huge. Yeah. What is the role of indigenous knowledge? Yeah, according to Flora, it is valuable because it's unique, locally specific, and accumulative across generations. So one generation have knowledge, and other generation have added knowledge, and then it's become a pool of knowledge. Indigenous knowledge and seeds can be exchanged effectively in indigenous community because they have social capital, they have trust, they have network, they have groups. So yeah, this according to Putnam, this is a social capital for the indigenous community. Yeah, previous studies has shown that around 25% of crops were used for supplying seeds. And traditional network still exists. There are some benefits of rice: high price, fragrance, easy maintenance, low input, and disease resistant. And the excellent thing that local rice have a good taste. Yeah, this is our previous research based on perception of the farmers themselves and also the consumers. Also, the technology is valid. We already proved that all the technology related with indigenous, the local seeds. Well, for example, in the seed selection, they use a very traditional way, like just taking some paddy rice and then listens the sounds, and they can predict whether the seed is good to be planted or not. So without modern technology, but we test with modern technology, and the result is about the same. Our previous research findings shows that the average farmer age was relatively old. It's an average is 57. So we can consider what's going on after 5 years or 10 years of 20 years, if they never transfer or transmit their knowledge to their sons or daughters, the knowledge and the seed will disappear. So this is really, they are really in trouble. And during the time of our facilitation project, there were very limited efforts to empower the indigenous community. So that's the reason why my colleague and I thinking that, okay, now it's time to do something for them, to help them to save their seeds, and also the knowledge related to making the seeds. Yeah, so the objective of our project was to empower the local paddy rice grower. So this is basically a facilitation project to make aware of the growers about the values of conserving the local rice varieties and the related farming knowledge, practices, and etc. And then the second one, to enable them to negotiate with stakeholders. And the methodology, so the participant is the Osing farmers. The Osing farmers, the indigenous community who live in the eastern part of Java Island. And then the year of facilitation project was 2008. This slightly outdated some of the project activities enable us to assess not only at that time, but now after 7 years, we have a chance to evaluate again what's going on, yeah, after some years. The strategy we used was participatory communication and extension. So by the strategy, individual are seen as the nucleus of development, and then communication must be in the center of the development. So in this way, participatory communication is a two-way or interactive communication. So by the strategy is that communication is not seen only as a linear, so not only transferring information, though this is still needed, but it's more than that. It's about exchanging information, about how to bind individual, in this case as the farmers, the growers, the paddy rice, the local paddy rice growers, and then to provide meaningful relationship between all the stakeholders, yeah, for farmers, and then for the researcher, and also the, say, agricultural agencies. So this is our premise, that participatory communication can empower the local paddy rice growers, and then help them to make a voice, to help them to participate and to negotiate with all the stakeholders. The method facilitation, we employ interdisciplinary team. There are two researchers. One is my colleagues, an agronomist, and the second one is mine as the leaders of the project. And then also we have our NGOs in the project. And then we employ cultural perspective as possible. Yeah. So we respect to their social capital, we respect and their norm. We try to integrate local leaders in our team. And we use face-to-face methods. It could be individual or in groups, group meeting. And then we employ multimedia, and we integrate stakeholders, and also multi-state procedures as suggested by Yun. She suggested nine stages or 9 phases, but we only highlighted focus on step 1 to step 6. So we omit the other steps because of time limitation and also financial limitation. This is the stage. This is the pre-facilitation stage. As I told you before, we integrating the research. This is my colleague. She's an agronomist. She has already done with me to collect as many as possible the local rice varieties, and then we want to bring our finding back to the community. We are collaborating with NGOs, as I told you before, and we hire a multimedia team. We ask them to help to prepare media, so our finding can be presented well. So here, sorry. Yeah, this one is our finding. This is local rice varieties that we found before, and then this is video. We also develop video. Entering the community. First of all, some of our members staying in the community for a while, so enable us to have a better situation. We know better situation of the local people. We have able to get in touch with key farmers in that area, and then we work with one indigenous leader, and actually not one, but he also have some friends to prepare the plan, our plan with them. So the plan is not only come from ourselves, but this combination of insider and outsider ways. So we discuss intensively how to present our finding, and then to help the local people have voice discussing with them. This is the supporting action. Our team member, this is the student. We also involve undergraduate student. There are some undergraduate students involved here, and then many of us go to the farmer, whether to go to the field or directly to their home, and we discuss about the local rice. We listening, we communicating our plan. Yeah, for example, like this one. Where did you get the knowledge about the Java rice? This one of their answer. From family itself, because starting from the first, my family has been growing rice of the Java types. So I learned from them, and finally, I could go on by myself. Another supporting action, we visiting farmer in group, listening and watching this discussion. So what happened here is that we present our finding, and then we ask them, what's the name of the variety? We actually already get the name from somebody, but we want to confirm. So confirmation is really important. We ask some people to come here, and we want to ask them whether the name is the same, and sometimes the name is different. Yeah. And we also try to ask the characteristic of certain varieties, so we got a lot of information by this technique. This is me. We also can find the network, how the seed distributed among them. Look at this one on the top here. They have a very good relationship between one farmers. Pak means Mr. here. So Mr. A, for example, have connection with Mr. B and C, etc. But some people only have small network. So for example, if somebody, it means that this guy rely on that guy in getting the seeds. So if this guy was, for example, do not plant the seed, and it will be trouble on this guy if he or she do not have their own seeds. So they really depend on each other. Particularly when somebody die, some people have lost the source of seeds. That's a big problem for them. Yeah, this based on area. Some people gather in one area, but some other farmers far away, yeah, in remote areas. So in case they have problem with seed, they must go to that area, or if they lost connection, and it will be a problem for them too. This is another our finding. Local rice is not only about technical things. So from this discussion, we know local rice have close relationship with their culture. This, for example, every time in harvest time, they always play music, and they play traditional music. And in the past, the music, the instrument always associated with the local rice, because at that time there is no modern rice. So when they play the music, they always remember about the local rice. So there's a big connection between things. And then we ask them to come together. There are about 25 farmers. We try to invite to come. Not all of them able to come. We picking them and bring them to the conference, and we try to presenting material with strong local content. For example, we developed the video, and then the video itself, the picture has come from that area. So it means that the actor and the actress and the farmers themselves. So I guarantee that people will very interested with the video, because he or she become actors in that movie. Yeah. And then this is the team. We also invited indigenous leader from other area, and then so he can contribute about what's going on in this area. This is us. This is a local leader. This is indigenous leader, and this is undergraduate student. And this one is the farmers. There are male farmers and women farmers too. And the most important things during the discussion, during the conference, is reflection. We want to know what their need actually, what their aspiration. For example, they very concerned on sustainable. If possible, there should be farmers who continue to plant the Java rice, and the more growers, the better. They need partnership. They feel that they don't want to do by themselves. They are too weak, and they need partner. I feel there is no party that defends the interests of farmers. Yeah. So we need volunteers who want to fight to help small communities. The government should seek breakthrough, look for steps to improve creativity of farmers to grow paddy rice. This is according to the indigenous leader. Kemiren is the village in Banyuwangi where people still hold their custom, and designated as a tourist village based art and culture. There is an initiative from the government to create a culture house, but it is the people themselves who organize object for art and culture. Okay. And this is the most important finding. I'm not so intensively lobbying the government. I just fostering the public about how the social and cultural side can contribute to the government. Yeah. So what happened is that recently the government has initiative to develop that area become ecotourism area. So when I did the project around 7 years ago, this is not yet the government have not yet this initiative. So just very recent. So basically they are very lucky because the government now pay attention on the culture, and because the seeds and the farming practice is part of the culture, and then suddenly they have a chance to connect with the government. In the past, based on our discussion, the government's not really pay attention for the farming, because the government wants productivity. They want the land more productive, so they use modern rice, modern seeds, and then now they have the community a chance because of this policy. How far local rice can be integrated in the agenda of tourism? There are some activities of local rice used as tourist attraction. Now I have a tour package in which there are local culinary, but I do not focus on local rice. I'm not too bold to promote when it is not according with field condition. Attraction to tourists is only partial, namely the activities pounding rice using mortar, which is in contrast to modern ways. And then when it comes to culture, indigenous people do things for reason of ritual. If for tourism, sometimes ritual activities was drawn to the commercial, resulting in the reduction of customs value itself. It should be supervised. So basically the community is in between whether they should involve in the program, tourism program, because of worry of commercialization or not. So yes, between yes and no. Yeah. At the final of the facilitation project, we want them to make commitment. Yeah. We ask them to, okay, you are getting old now. This is your chance to transmit your knowledge to your son and to your daughter, or the community will have trouble in the next 10 or 20 years. And then, because at that time, the government have not recognized them, we try to give certificate just to tell them, okay, what you done is really, really good. Yeah. You save in the city, you save in the technology, you save in the practice. Yeah, at the time, I think it's really, really valuable. But now the government have more awareness about this thing. This is the indigenous leader. This is from the local community, and this is from the house community, and this is the women farmers. And then later, we withdrawing from the community. As I told you before, we only do phase number 1 to number 6. We do not work for number 7 until 9. And then it's actually become a big problem that maybe we can discuss later.
Hello everyone. Is everyone at the back can hear me? I'm not a big fan of using microphone. Is that okay? Okay. I just sound really good and I'm using microphone.
You'll be fine.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
He's on already. It's over. Yeah.
I'm so nervous using microphone. It's too fancy. Well, my name is Abdul. I'm a graduate student, and Natalie is my academic advisor. I think I'm Latina, Pauline.
Okay. Yeah, let me do it.
Thank you. My name is Abdul, and Natalie is my academic advisor. She is traveling. She's in Chiang Mai for, I think she's supervising other students. So it's my part now to talk about this. Thank you so much, Pak for talking about Indonesia, and I'll be also talking about Indonesia, but from different island. Today, I hope it's not really depressing because I know everyone is looking forward to lunchtime. I don't want to hold everyone to have a late lunch, so I'm going to speak as fast as I can. Change in violent conflict and another thing.
Up and down. Up and down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. So it's sort of a short summary what I'm going to talk about, but before that, I would like to tell you that I'm a little bit positivistic, so don't hate me because of that. I know everyone is very cultural studies, legal studies. Don't kill me because I'm doing something a little bit positivistic. And then my background is information behavior, so I would like to see conflict situation from the perspective of information behavior, which means how people use, search, and share information, and also what is the social effect of getting information. One of the work that I would like to cite is from Alveda Chapman with her theory about information poverty theory. It looks familiar, doesn't it? We were just talking about Indonesia, but I'm going to talk about different island. When I'm talking about Ambon, how many of you have heard Ambon before in this room? 1, 2. Okay, I thought I was going to skip this part, and now I'm going to talk about this part. Well, Ambon is situated in Central Java, not Central Java, Central Indonesia. Central Java is where I'm from. It's pretty dense population, as you can see. And then if you look at the topography, you might find it's a little bit hilly, it's a bit steep and steep. Also, you might see some bay and some bay area which where Muslims are normally living there, and the Christian live on the other side. And this is not a context for you if you're not familiar with Ambon. The conflict occurred between 1999 to 2005, where more than 5,000 people died because of the conflict. And if you look at the statistics as well, you know, we're talking about statistics and it's a little bit debatable, but if you look at from media sources, you will find that more than 10,000 people are internally displaced because of the conflict. And in 2005, peace agreement was signed, but then it helped at some point. But then in 2011, the conflict occurred again. So there was a brief description of the brief context about conflict. And then, of course, people will be likely to blame religion as the source of the conflict, but actually, there is another thing that we can look at from information behavior perspective. Let me discuss this. What happened in 1999, 2005, talking about rumors. Rumors, as I really know, that is misleading information. It's something that's not really true or maybe false. And in 1999, 2005, face-to-face rumors was disseminated. I'm not saying disseminated as unintentionally disseminated because we're going to speculate many things about that. But I would like to share that within this time frame, conflict was helped by rumors. For instance, one church was burned by a Muslim community, and then the Christian community get provoked, get angered because of that situation, that rumor, and then they kill each other afterwards. Slightly different in 2011, from 1999 to 2005, were mobile communication. Yes, we're talking about technology. People hate and love technology, especially when we're talking about corporation. I know some people hate corporation, but we cannot escape from living from corporation. So it is something that we need to talk about as well. But in this case, I would like to share that mobile phone, mobile communication, help conflict to spread. The same issues occur. The same issues applies. For instance, when the Christian community heard received an SMS saying that, oh, our people, one of the girls from this community was captured in the Muslim community. So what to do? The mobile communication made the information, the rumors, spread fastly. So the promise of information to spread across the island or the city helped the conflict to escalate. And then another part that I would like to share today is about what's happening today. I did my fieldwork last February. So this is what happened. Face-to-face and mediated communication technology were used to build trust. But I did mention about social capital, one of the paper that I was developing, but not talking about is also how the role of social capital helping building trust among the communities in order to putting peace across with each other. So that was the context of the conflict. And this one thing that I want to talk about, how people change when they get information and how the information might help them to build trust or something like that. We'll talk about it in a broad spectrum, of course, in order to get more feedback, so I can think through about another paper. This is theory that I was mentioning before, information public theory. Basically, this is the thing. So you commit secrecy. You don't share information. You hide information because you think it might help you it might protect yourself. So you cover your truth feeling because you don't want people to know. If they know what you really feel, then it might jeopardize your situation. That was basically the main idea of the information public theory. And these are the propositions that I would like to not really testing it out, but try to put them in certain phenomena. Once again, don't hate me because it's a little bit positivistic. And then, and this way I did it. I'm not going to talk about it because we can talk about it further if you would like. Basically, as I did, these are some information that I have. Okay, this is what I got when I was interpreting my data and looking at it. So, 1, 2, 3 denote before, during, and post-violent conflict. And then A denote Christian community, and B denote Muslim community. As you can see in this figure, that before the conflict between Muslim and Christian community, they see themselves as insiders. But during the conflict, I call it outsiders type 1, which means I don't belong to your religion, so we were fighting each other because of the rumors, things like that. And then in a post-conflict situation, you can see that they see themselves as the citizen of Ambon. They see that, oh, we're no longer Christian or Muslim, but we are citizens of Ambon. They see their collective identity as Ambanis, instead of saying that, oh, I'm not only a Muslim, I'm not only a Christian, but I'm a citizen of Ambon. There is a spread of things. And the what about outsider type 2, which means those who are not from Ambon. This is a very interesting point to talk about, because if you go to Ambon and you talk about who caused the conflict, they will say that outsiders, which means those who are not from Ambon, which means military, which means government, which means Laskar Jihad or Jihad troops, or other people, things like that. So that was part of the narrative. But I'm not going to talk about narrative in detail, but if you would like to know, please feel free to ask question. To make this figure a little bit concrete, this is one of the examples how the evolution occur between among Ambanis, insider type 1, and then outsiders. You can see here between us, they used to think that Christian is not equal to Muslim, which is correct, which is true. That is part of the reality. And then, as I said before, these outsider type 2 people, they see people from other island, from other city, who create a conflict, but they didn't know that. And this is one of the example of how they build their own their collective identity as a citizen of Ambon. Insiders A plus B, the accumulation of insiders type 1, and the insiders before the conflict. This happened in a post-conflict situation. And this is what I found when I was looking at information public theory. Well, how does it work? How does it work in a situation of conflict? So I didn't really go through the propositions, but I think it's sum them up. For instance, during the violent conflict situation, information was ignored, which means, oh, why have to listen about Christian community? Why have to listen Muslim community? They're not part of us. Even though if I talk to them, if I share information, my situation, it might help the community to be better off, or it might prevent conflict, but I don't want to listen to that. That was happening in a conflict situation. And then I'll jump to the what's happening in the post-conflict situations. For instance, self-protection and low of trust and high risk. So in the situation of low trust, of distrust, and then a risky situation, people don't share information because they see that sharing information might jeopardize their situation, the reality of life. Let me give you another example to make this figure come into reality. I don't feel like talking about it. Maybe if you study about, like, for instance, maybe you can see something about grief here, something about fear, something about distrust, something about too risky to talk about a real situation, or maybe my true situation. People are always debating about which one is real, which one is true. So in this situation, this informant rather hide information about his feeling of living in the border, at the borders area, because sharing information, once again, might trigger another conflict. So you might want to analyze it from negotiating identities. You might want to analyze it from how power relations evolve between the Muslim, between the Christian in this situation. But this is another, and this is, I think this excerpt summarize what information poverty is in this situation. And I would like to conclude with implications. I know I'm trying to make it very practical because you know people don't really want to talk about things. So what? I suppose if you're in the field. I will jump to the second implications. Most significant change evaluation method. I think it's really important because many people always talk about it, but they don't really know how to do it. And it is very important to find to find from the initial start to the end, or if you see change and something that really evolving all the time, you want to see when you need to give intervention, or you might want to see in which stage you might want to jump in, so when the conflict is not happening. That's one of the things that I was thinking when I was writing a paper. Of course, it is a preliminary implication that needs for the discussion. I think I will stop here, and I'm looking forward for your inputs. Thank you.
Hi, can you hear me? Yeah. I'm JM. I'm from the University of the Philippines. Yeah. And the other people here, the other presenters here talk about Indonesia. But I'll be talking about. It's not working. Oh. Okay. I'll be talking about the universe. You probably know her. Probably seen her. Sorry. This is Tia Wordsback, and she was recently crowned as Miss Universe 2015-2016. Yeah, and to many, she's a symbol of women empowerment, confidence, and beauty. And to many, she's a symbol of Filipina empowerment, the status of women in the Philippines. And you probably think those coming from other nationalities that Filipino women are empowered and are free from any forms of subjugation and control and oppression and abuse. In 2013, the Philippines ranked 5th worldwide in gender equality, and was, as a matter of fact, the only Asian country included in the top 10. That's according to the World Economic Forum. However, the narrative told by media is a little different from the stories lived by many Filipino women. For example, according to the National Demographic Household Survey, this is a survey conducted in the Philippines, 1 in 5 women aged 15 to 49 experienced physical violence since age 15. Similarly, 14.4% of married women experience physical abuse from their husbands, and 37% of separated women cited domestic violence as the reason for separation or annulment. The list goes on and on and on. But just to summarize, according to the Philippine Commission on Women, the violence against women cases reported to the Philippine National Police starting 1997 until 2013 are on the increasing trend. It's like what's presented here in the figure. Now it's curious and interesting to ask, how does the Philippine government, most especially health institutions in the Philippines, cater to the needs of these women? Women who have been abused by their husbands, by their partners, even by their family members. In 1997, the Philippine government passed Republic Act number 8505, or the Rape Victim Assistance and Protection Act of 1998. This law sought to establish rape crisis centers nationwide to address the needs of women survivors of violence. The law was even strengthened by an administrative order under the Aquino government, mandating hospitals retained by the Department of Health and supported by local government units to establish Women and Child Protection Units, or WCPUs, in 25 provinces nationwide. Now, one of these hospitals is the Philippine General Hospital, or PGH. PGH is a government-funded public hospital administered and maintained by the University of the Philippines, Manila. It caters to around 600 patients every year, most of whom come from poor to very poor economic backgrounds. The PGH, as mentioned, has a well-established women's desk, right? No? And it's located at the emergency complex. Actually, when you pass by it, you wouldn't know that it's even an office. It looks like a cupboard. That's how deplorable the situation of the women's desk in the Philippines is, considering that this is one of the best hospitals in the Philippines, although it's public owned and state governed. Now, this brings to mind to question how does PGH cater to the needs of women? Because according to the women's desk, every year they encounter hundreds and hundreds of vow cases. No? As a matter of fact, it was in the year 2000 when the highest number of vow cases were admitted in the hospital, totaling to almost 700 cases. 700 cases just in a year. So my colleagues and I, decided to write a study about it, and this is it: the Kapwa in Compassion, examining compassionate healthcare for VAL victims among PGH healthcare providers. These are my colleagues, Alisa Batu and Kai Ordinario. Unfortunately, they couldn't be here today, so I'm invoking their presence by posting their Facebook photos here. Yeah. The main question is that we try to answer is how do healthcare providers, Filipino healthcare providers at PGH, extend compassionate services to violence against women or VAW victims? The focus here lies on, first, the Filipino nature of the healthcare providers, and second, the very very theme rather of compassion. Now, compassion has been a trend in healthcare research and evaluation. No, so just to define what compassion is. Compassion, according to Karen Armstrong, is the golden rule, stated either in positive or negative version. Do unto others what you want others do unto you. Or the negative stance of it, do not do unto others what you don't want others do unto you. However, Van der Singel argued against it. The golden rule, stated in the positive version, to embody compassion is false. Why? According to her, because it projects moral projection. It leads to moral projection rather. It may let one's own value judgment be the path to provide compassion to another person. To quote her, we need to identify with each other as human beings who are vulnerable and at risk of the tragedies of life. But at the same time, we need to disself oneself in order to see the interest and suffering of the other person experience. Human beings do not at all share the same values or preferences in life. At the same time, according to Van der Singel, we tend to confuse compassion with different words. For example, pity. We know the difference between the two. Pity has negative connotations, and at the same time, for you to have pity over another person, you have to be on a higher level of status, right? Next, we tend to confuse compassion with empathy, but they're different. According to Martha Nussbaum as well and Van der Singel, empathy is needed to establish or to administer compassion. But compassion takes one notch higher by not only identifying the suffering of the other person, but having this desire to help the person you're dealing with or you're interacting with. Linguistically speaking as well, compassion comes from the Latin word compati, which means to suffer with. Now, to suffer with, it's quite interesting for us to have the preposition with in the Latin definition or original term for compassion, because that it's really close to home. Because in the Philippines, in Filipino psychology or Psikolohiyang Pilipino, as developed by Virgilio Enriquez, we have a term called the kapwa. It's a Tagalog term which means the self in the other person or the shared self. It's different from the Western concept of I or ego, wherein the I is separate from the other. In the Tagalog term kapwa, the I and the other comes together with the other. They share the same space. According to Professor Emmanuel Dumlao, a colleague of mine from the University of the Philippines, Los Baños, kapwa came from the compound Tagalog term ka-puwang. Ka is an affix, it's a prefix actually, which we attach to establish sharing, shared. puwang in Tagalog, or in English, so translated in English means space. So kapwa, kapuwang means shared space. In kapwa, there's a space wherein you, your identity, and the identity of another person comes together in life. Now, according to Psikolohiyang Pilipino, the concept of kapwa is at the core of our Filipino personhood. Now, we integrated that into the framework that we use, also integrating other pieces of literature that we found about compassionate healthcare. The first of which is the study conducted by Fernando III and Considine just recently, just 2 years ago, about the transactional model of compassionate healthcare. They introduced different factors that affect physicians from extending or administering healthcare to their patients. Also, Van der Singel's study on the dimensions of compassion. She enumerated 7 actually, and these are attentiveness, active listening, naming of suffering, involvement, helping, being patient, being present rather, and understanding. Now, we conducted in-depth face-to-face interviews in a sample determined using snowball sampling and convenience sampling. We interviewed them during the height of their work. So we had to excuse them from administering to the patients and talk to them for a few minutes about their experiences in catering to the needs of VAU victims or VAU patients. 6 PGH healthcare providers agreed to be part of this study. We divided them into 2 categories, the medical practitioners and the paramedical practitioners. The medical practitioners are consisting of 2 male surgeons from the emergency room and 2 female OB gynecologists. The paramedical practitioners are composed of 2 female social workers who have been there in the office for quite years, for many years already. Now, we first asked them, what do you think are the services needed by VAU patients coming to your office or coming to your clinic? They enumerated, we were able to identify 5 recurring themes about it. The first one, immediate medical treatment. Of course, when they have lacerations, when they have bruises, you need to treat them immediately. Second, psychological counseling. Documentation, if the patient decides to pursue a legal case, it has to be well documented, most especially the medical legal. The social services, for instance, where would the patient stay? Does the patient have a place to stay overnight? Does she have any food at all or any piece of clothing she can wear? And of course, the extra mile services. Sometimes, because of the poor economic background of the VAU patients, it's the doctors and the nurses and the social workers who foot for the expenses of the hospital bills of the VAU patients. I won't show this to you already, but it just goes to show the flow chart we developed as to how the VAU patients, have their process inside the hospital. What about the subjective meanings of compassion that these healthcare providers attach to their service? The first one, I'll be a little bit, native here, so I'll be using Tagalog terms rooted from the Filipino psychology, but I'll try my best to explain them to you. First is pakikipagkapwa. They view compassion as pakikipagkapwa. Pakikipagkapwa is opening up the door of the I to include the other. At the same time, it requires treating another as a human being and hence as your equal. So from a transcript from the interview, Surgeon 1, to quote him, "We have ways to learn how to be efficient in asking about the concerns of the VAU patients. But sometimes we just couldn't help but act like a robot. Of course, at times, we come to mind and realize that, hey, we're still talking to a human being." Similarly, according to a study by Virgilio Enriquez, he identified 3 expressive behaviors of pakikipagkapwa. The first one is pagkamakatao, or people-centered orientation. Pagkamakatulungin, which means service to people around them. Pamathalaan, commitment to communities. Based on the findings, all the healthcare providers in the interview or in the study were able to demonstrate clearly service to the people around them and service to the community. However, there's a big debate about the pagkamakatao or the people-centered orientation of the physicians, because it goes in contrast with the kind of orientation that the social workers have. According to the physicians, we don't need to be involved too much in the plight of the patients. You have to be professional because that's their mandate as physicians and how they were trained to be. However, upon a closer introspection of the text of coming from the interviews, we came to realize that it's not really distancing yourself away from your patient. It's actually helping a big number of patients coming to their office asking for their help. To quote one of the surgeons as well, there's a level of empathy too, but you have to be professional as well. Don't get too much attachments to your patients. The next subjective meaning is pakikiramdam. Pakikiramdam, simply put, is empathy or sensitivity. According to Ubigayni 1, empathy and sensitivity are the key. If she's more hysterical, we avoid making extremely close physical contact. We need to calm them down first to give them comfort. Sometimes they feel shy to share about what happened, so you have to dig in. Now, pakikiramdam or sensitivity and empathy are recurrent themes in almost all of the interviews. Next is kagandahang loob. Kagandahang loob is a shared inner nobility or shared humanity. To quote Ubigayni 1, the patients are the ones we place on top of our priorities. We even sacrifice going home on time for them. If we don't have any compassion, we would have simply observed regular office hours and take off. But we put them first above, their welfare first before ours. This goes to show that they just can't detach themselves from the suffering of their patients. Next is asal. Asal is the expressive aspect of a person's behavior. It's one of the elements of the Filipino value system. Now, we were able to categorize the expressive behaviors of asal into three. The verbal approach, the verbal aspect, the non-verbal aspect, and the general aspect to create a climate of conversation with the patient. Now, for the verbal, it depends because it's highly contextual. Sometimes physicians tend to directly ask questions about what happened or to be a little subtle about it. But what's apparent is that they avoid the use of the word bakit or why. They don't ask the patients, why were you abused? Because that's absurd, that's insensitive. They let the person speak for themselves. They let the person shape her own narrative and tell her own story at her own pace. Non-verbal, paralanguage, tone of voice, haptics, proxemics, facial expressions, and approach. Of course, you need to be sensitive and person-centered. So just be quick about it. Virtue, they view compassion as a virtue. It's an individual's excellence in theory, in practice, as well as in moral virtue or excellence in character. According to Ubigayni 2, of course, you should not judge them. It's the key word here, not judging the other person. Also, there's a dichotomy between call of duty and social responsibility. Sometimes there's dissonance. Why are we helping these vow patients? Is it because it's our call, our mandate, because of the Hippocratic Oath? Or is it because we need to provide for them? Based on the research findings, extending compassion can sometimes cause dissonance. Yeah, just like what I mentioned. According to Ubigayni 2, I can't be too involved with them. That's the context. Because I'll get depressed. Sometimes your judgment gets clouded. Sometimes you must be objective. Although you pity their situation, you need to distance yourself. Whenever your patient dies, you would cry for them all. What about your next patients? So still, they're prioritizing the patients coming to them. Of course, they view compassion as a social construct. It's not something that can't be taught to them. It's something that they develop for themselves. Now, the dimensions of healthcare compassion, we categorize it into three, following the framework of Way and Tracy. Recognizing, relating, reacting. Basically, the same arguments or dimensions proposed by Van der Singel. But we wanted to add, based on the findings, we wanted to add another dimension, and that is empowerment. Because most of the physicians and the social workers, they wanted to educate, they wanted to make the patient more confident about herself, about fighting for justice. Of course, the different factors affecting healthcare compassions are also the same. We have the factors coming from the healthcare provider, the intelligence that he has or she has, or the training that he had, or even the gender. Patient factors, the relationship between the patient and the physician. Clinical factors as well. Yeah. And what's more important is the organizational or structural or institutional factors. Because this is really limiting the kind of service that they're extending to the VAU patients in the overarching context of sociocultural factors. I would just like to discuss this very quickly. Based on the study, we were able to identify and enumerate problems that they encountered in delivering compassion. The first one is the organizational and instructional aspect, which includes, of course, the lack of support from the government in terms of catering to the needs of patients, most especially VAU patients in the Philippines. For example, there's a needing facilities or physical setup for a women's desk and its patient. It needs larger women's desk office space. It needs proper storage area for rape kit. It needs dedicated examination rooms. Because there's no privacy. They had to tell their story over and over and over again in front of many people, in front of bystanders and other patients beside them. Also, there's a lack of budget, and at the same time, there's no efficiency in the process on the end of the patients. They had to travel from one office to another just to get accommodated. Problems encountered in delivering compassion. Number 2, the socio-cultural factors. Although this isn't really in the scope of PGH, but we believe that it's part and parcel of how compassion is being extended and received in different areas in the Philippines. For example, abuse happens and it continues in part due to the existing traditional views on the place of Filipino women in society. A patient also may be subject to abuse by other societal members who are also involved in providing assistance to VAU patients. And this is really saddening because we found out that healthcare providers in PGH try as much as possible to extend compassionate healthcare to the patients. But when the patient step out of the hospital to pursue a legal case or to seek further assistance, that's when they get more abused by other people. They're being blamed for the kind of circumstance that they had. Values and judgments from other members of society, from those in the legal system to law enforcement, are a means to void compassionate healthcare already extended to VAU patients. Now, we took the liberty of recommending some amendments, both in theory and also in practice. First one is that we include empowerment in the kind of compassion, the dimension of compassion that we are extending to VAU patients. Also, we need to convert PGH Women's Desk into a one-stop shop where all the services extended to VAU victims may be accessed. Public and private-run hospitals must step up their services to ease the congestion in hospitals like PGH. This will also improve in the long term the services extended to VAU patients. The document used by PGH for VAU patients must reflect the process, and there's a need to develop a communication plan for the women's desk to promote awareness on the services that they may provide to VAU patients. Also, there's a need to provide VAU-specific training for medical practitioners. And in the biggest context, education reform geared towards gender rights and gender equality in basic education institutions. And there's a need to strengthen institutional support through provision of resources and facilities necessary to deliver compassionate healthcare. So that's our study bibliography. I do not own any of the pictures or images shown in this presentation. Thank you.
Hello.
So first of all, good morning. Before I proceed with my actual presentation, please allow me to talk a little bit about myself. I am Paulo Regel Samonte. I'm a fresh graduate actually of a bachelor's degree in the University of the Philippines, Los Baños, which is the same university where Sir J.M. Mbate and the rest of my friends from the Philippines are from. But right now I'm working in Thailand. I'm based in Mekong Institute, which is in Kon Tet, Thailand. And I'm not entirely new in NUS. I've been here in 2014 as an exchange student. So this paper is actually from my undergraduate research, which I did while I was in college. And it's funny because yesterday I found out from my references that one of the sources of my information was actually Ma'am Rosel, who graduated here. So yeah, my study is that new and fresh. So why am I saying all of these? I'm saying all this so that you would be gentle about my research. So while most of you are doctors and experts of your field, I'm just a novice researcher who happened to have an interest in the phenomenon of migration. So please be kind to me. But kidding aside, apart from that, I also wanted to talk about myself because myself is and my experiences are an integral part of the research itself. So without further ado, let me proceed. Let me introduce to you my. Okay. Alright, so let me introduce to you my topic, long-distance parenting, a media ecological study on values communication between migrant parents and their children in Paete. So just to give you a quick background or the agenda of my presentation. So first I'm going to talk about very briefly about my topic, and then the rationale and background of my study, the objectives, the methodology, the results and discussion, and finally the recommendations. As for the topic, I just decided to delineate my research title and talk about the major concepts that's in it. So first is media ecology, which is pioneered by Marshall McLuhan. I think we're familiar with the global village and his famous maxim about the medium being the message. So simply put, media ecology is the study of media as environments, as cited by Scolari. So for the purpose of this research, values is defined as a person's principles or standards of behavior, or one's judgment of what is important in life. Whereas a migrant parent is a parent, whether male or female, who has been or still is a migrant worker, while the children of migrants is a sector of any age who have been or still are the children of a migrant parent, whether mother or father or both. So as for the rationale and background of my study, I wanted to begin about my personal story as my experiences as a child of a migrant father. So ever since I was born, my father was already working abroad. So this study is very personal to me. And also, this is largely because of our close family ties in the family, which is very common in the Filipino culture. And apart from that is also my being born in the age of information communication technology. So I actually witnessed most of the medium, like how my parents and my family used most of the medium used by migrant transnational families. So I've witnessed my parents write letters to each other when I was 6 years old, I think, and then this quickly transitioned into the use of telephones, and then which is very convenient relatively, and then the sudden rise of SMS, and then internet and emails and social media and all of that. So next is the family in migration. So as I mentioned before, close family ties is a unique feature of the typical Filipino family, but because of the OFW phenomenon, children are growing up under the care of single or surrogate parents. And there are an estimated 7.38 million overseas Filipino around the world, so that's a lot relatively, because there is around 100 million population in the Philippines. So ICTs in migrant communication. Family ties between Filipino migrant parents and their children are maintained through the use of ICTs. And this gives way to the concept of absent presence, which per Tierra defined as being there yet not really there. So in the assumption that the transnational families continue to attempt to communicate with each other, the use of ICTs among families hence shapes their overall experience of the migration phenomenon. As for communication within the family, I'm from the development communication background, by the way, and going through previous development communication studies, it is very seldom that the link between family and communication is discussed as a vital aspect of development. So when I conceptualized this research, I was thinking that development starts from the individual, and the individual's development starts from the family. And so family should be a central focus of development studies then, but it doesn't happen really in practice or in the field where I'm in. So the study actually provides a baseline to introduce family relationships and mediated communication in the development communication discourse. And this answers the strong recommendations of past researchers on the need to use more qualitative methods at studying family and migration. As for the research objectives, guided by Marshall McLuhan's media ecology, my study sought to better understand how migrant parents communicate values to their children in Taytay, Laguna through the use of various information and communication technology, or ICTs. Specifically, it aimed to describe how migrant parents and their children in Taytay, Laguna choose a medium to which they communicate, identify the most significant values communicated by these migrant parents to their children, and describe how the communication of values by migrant parents to their children is shaped by their use of various ICTs. As for the methodology, first let me begin with my research design. So I use qualitative research methods for my data gathering. So I'm not going to talk about it further. With regards to choosing the topic, the general interest really, as I've mentioned, was to situate the place of communication within the family in the development communication discourse. So as I was narrowing down my topic, I took interest on the study of migration primarily because of my personal experience of it. And then I decided to focus on transnational families' media use since ICTs are very timely. And the realization that children of migrants are found at the periphery of migration studies. So I used a case study of Taytay, Laguna in the Philippines. So for my research locale, I chose Taytay, Laguna primarily because I was born and raised in this small town. Therefore, I believe that I would be even more authority. I have more authority to talk about it apart from other people. So I also seek to understand how this place has been changed by the migration phenomenon. So to give you a brief background of Taytay, Taytay is actually considered the carving capital of the Philippines, and carving was part of the town's industry even before the Spaniards came to colonize the country centuries ago. But due to unethical business tactics and the rising cost of food, and of course the local environmental resolution prohibiting the cutting of trees, Taytay's wood carving industry slowly started to die, and residents began seeking for opportunities abroad. Hence, Taytay started to become a nest of OFWs. So for the selection of research participants, I used theoretical sampling. And finally, I came up with 5 relevant participants who I thought were the most qualified people for this research. So first is my elementary school teacher, Roma, who is OFW, who has also a mother who used to be an OFW as well. So second is Rem, who is a family friend, who's from a very religious family background. And third is Maris, the aspiring teacher who's from a very poor neighborhood. Next is Grace, the good girl, who is actually my classmate in elementary. So when I say good girl, it's not very subjective because she's actually my classmate from elementary, and she has always been like, you know, these awards, like she's always been awarded best in conduct. So if she's not a good girl, I don't know who is. Like she really is an angel. And then of course Howell, who is my cousin, the overachiever of the group. So for the data collection, I use unstructured and in-depth interviewing, which is simply defined as a conversation with a purpose. And as for the, I also utilize pagpapakwento at pangkipagkwentuhan, which are local research methods. These methods are more applicable when the researcher and the research respondents themselves are no stranger to each other, which is in my case. In this case, rapport needs not to be established as the participants are willingly open to share their stories. So as for this one, according to Gadamer, the search for understanding requires the interpreter's awareness of their own bias and preconceptions, affecting the habit of projecting a meaning for the text as a whole as soon as initial meaning is grasped. Thus, researchers should bracket their biases and own them fully, becoming self-aware that these biases would color their interpretation of the text. So, in my case, instead of pushing aside my biases, I actually embrace them and use them to really understand what my participants are going through. So, because I understood my participants' experiences based on my understanding of my own experiences, I, as the researcher, became inseparable from the data. So the analysis came from interview transcriptions, field notes, and personal observations. And now, the results and discussion of the study. So I was able to point out that the love for family, the value for education, and the love for self were the most significant values communicated by migrant parents to their children, which comes as no surprise given the Filipino culture. So these are the results of my analysis of my data. So first, I'm going to talk about the role of left-behind parent in instilling values. So while migrant parents still strive to communicate values to their children, of equal importance is the role of left-behind parents in instilling values. So non-migrant parents carry the heavier responsibility of communicating values to their children, primarily because values need to be modeled, and parents who are present at home are the ones better expected to perform this role. Limited by distance, migrant parents would mostly act just as to reinforce these values. Of equal importance is also the role of extended relatives, because sometimes the inability of the non-migrant parent to take on the responsibility of parenting renders the importance of close family relatives in taking care of the children. This is especially true for non-migrant fathers who often cannot perform the caring work of the family. So when a mother migrates, it often becomes the burden of the girls in the family who assume the roles of the migrant mothers. So this is quite self-explanatory. The gender dictates who takes the place of the absentee parents when they migrate. So a mother's migration meant that it would be the eldest daughter to take her place, whereas a father's migration meant it should be the eldest son. The gender dictates also which kinds of values are communicated by a migrant parent to their children. So for instance, female children in general would be more comfortable talking about sensitive issues such as pregnancy and romantic relationships with their mother than that of the father, and in vice versa. Also, the convergence of different communication media and pangangaral or parenting became evident. So it happened that they need not to choose one medium to which they communicate. Instead, it is the convergence of all these different medium that proves to be an effective method of communicating or parenting for parents and their children. Alright, so this one is now I'm going to talk about the values communication as rendered in various media. So first of all is the video calls features as effective tools in parenting. So as a result of my study, because of the video call's ability to enable surveillance and allow for the presence of both the voice and the face, it becomes a viable medium for parenting. Its effectiveness as a medium for communicating values lies in the enabling of direct observation of children's behavior and situation. So one of my respondents actually, he cited this instance wherein he offended his mother and his father was there in the computer, in the Skype. So the father could actually observe what was happening real time, therefore he was able to scold his son during that situation. And of course, the more accurate rendering of emotions as evident in the combination of the voice and facial expressions, and the preventing of false listening due to face-to-face interaction. So my participants would admit that they would really zone out if they were just talking to their parents in the telephone and just pretend to be listening. But when they use these video calls, they could not do that. They should look at their parents, and therefore this prevents false listening. So education also emerged as the primary value communicated via ICTs. Like apart from among the three, it is the most communicated value, and as the findings of my study suggest, this may be attributed to three factors which are as follows. education of children as the primary cause of parents' migration. So the parents would actually always remind their children that the reason why they have to migrate and work abroad is because of their education. So they have to do well in school. And also education as a means to escape poverty. This is very evident in the Filipino context. Even the media portrays education as a very important tool for people to rise out of poverty. And of course, education as a key to prevent the possibility of further migration in the family. So, while the medium affects the environment to which the communication of values occur, findings of this study show that perhaps of greater importance even to the medium in communicating values is the prior relationship the children have with their parents. So the level of disclosure that children have and the effectiveness of values communication, it turns out, is still largely dependent on their interpersonal relationship with their parents rather than the media used. So communication media, therefore, are only objects to which interpersonal relationships are maintained. And as could be gleaned from the findings of this research, values communicated from a distance by a parent to a child are likewise values passed on to the rest of the family members. This is apparent on how children of migrants communicate to their younger siblings the values taught to them by their parents abroad, or how these values are passed from one generation to the next. And while this study focused on the explicit communication of values through the use of ICTs, I found out that values passed forward need not always communicated verbally, as sometimes the mere act of parental migration is enough to communicate these values. So this is evident in two of my research participants who said that certain values need not to be reminded to them because they already know this. Like this, they know this is the reason why their parents are away. So you know, this exhibits how actions rather than words sometimes communicate values best. And lastly, ICTs in communicating love. So for each and every one of my participants, the answer to the question, do ICTs and long-distance parenting help parents communicate love, is a positive yes. But looking past the yes-no dichotomy, the bigger question really is, to what extent do ICTs communicate love? More so, is mediated communication enough to communicate love? This important question is yet to be answered. Lastly, for my recommendations, for government, non-government, and media institutions, the government could create a more accessible migrant communication mechanism, for instance, a subsidized international phone calls or free video call usage. And furthermore, they could, human development organizations can create awareness as to how parental migration's social costs could be lessened. And mass media may produce television shows that portray the lives of children of migrants. It should be aimed at giving the mass a deeper understanding of the effects of migration in the individual level, effects of which are seldom discussed in the wider public. As for future research, a similar study conducted could be made for the older forms of media such as letters and cassette tapes, and of course focusing on the migrant parents' perspective instead of the children, and a similar study focusing more on a specific value, for instance reproductive health, or a different topic altogether, for instance conflict resolution, and a similar study employing other qualitative research methodologies such as visual ethnography and life history. That's all. Thank you.